Welcome back to the farmstead. Well, we have started off 2025 with cold weather, but we have had plenty to do around the house to keep us busy and stay warm. We started with a little run to the grocery store for eggs and milk and all the stuff to make chicken broth. And that'll be a project for later in the week. We started our pantry challenge dinners making a soup and cornbread, always a favorite around here. And had some cookies still in the freezer from what I bought from the kids, and we made up a batch of those. I put some chicken chunks in the crock pot one day and made some orange chicken. Huh, sure was good. Served it over rice with some steamed veggies. You can't beat that. But I tried when I made beef tips and rice one night. Then one night we had sloppy joes mixed with noodles and corn and another little batch of cookies. I started the chicken stock on Friday morning by putting half of it into my roaster and half of it into a stock pot. And after 24 hours, it had cooked down and was absolutely glorious. And the house smelt amazing. So to pressure can it, I started by putting all of my jars into the dishwasher to both wash them and get them hot. I put in enough to do 2 pressure canners full, which was 36 jars. So I'm going to start with what's on the stove first. I've got my canner over there ready to go. And now I'm just going to dip out chunks from the broth. And I'm going to drain it all. Now I want to get all the juice off this even, so I'm putting it in a strainer in a bowl, and we're going to catch all of that. And it takes a little while to scoop all the stuff out. But whew, it sure has made some good stock. Now that I have all the big chunks out, I want to strain the juice that's left from that. So I'm going to pour these off into a bowl, and those will be discarded. I've gotten all the goodness out of that stuff that I can. Believe me. Now, this is definitely the most tedious part of the process, but it is very much worth it. So we have strained it out, all the big stuff. Now we're just going to put it through this sieve and get even more of the bits out of it. Now, this part of the process is strictly up to what you like. I like mine to be pretty free of all the little bits and pieces that are in it. Now, you may notice I didn't put any seasonings in this at all. No salt, no pepper, no any other kinds of seasoning. I want it to be just the flavors of the bones and the onions and the carrots and the celery. These containers that I get from my restaurant supply store are absolutely perfect for this kind of job. I can strain lots of liquid into them, can store lots in them. They go in the fridge, they can go in the freezer. They're relatively inexpensive. So if you have a restaurant supply store close to you, go and see if you can get this type of container to work with. You will be glad you did. Now you'll see in my strainer just how much more of the little bits that were in there that all got strained out. And it did a great job, but I want to do it even just a little bit more. So I've poured all my liquid into one of the containers, and I've put my strainer back on top of the other one, and I'm going to add some cheesecloth. Now, I'm going to dip that out and put it through the cheesecloth, and this gets just even more of the bits out. And you'll see in a minute how many. Now, after this is finished, you could do one of two things. You can either go ahead and can it, which I'm going to do. I'm going to put it back into the stock pot and get it hot so that I can can it. Or you can put these containers into the refrigerator, let it sit at least overnight, and all of the greasy bits will come to the top. And then you can scoop those off. You could actually portion this out into containers, pint or quart containers, and freeze them if you would like. But since I am trying to clean out my freezers, I prefer the canning method. And then the electricity goes off, I don't have to worry about it thawing in the freezer. Now you can see it's draining through pretty good, but it takes a few minutes. And I'm wiping the bits away from the bottom of the strainer. See? Told you. There's quite a bit still left in there. But now I've got a good clear broth. I'm back in the pot to get it hot. Now my jars are washed and hot. My stock is getting hot there in the pot, and my canner is getting warm as well. So remember, when you're canning, you want your jars, your product, and either your pressure canner or your water bath canner to all be the same. If it's all hot, it's all hot. If it's all cold, it's all cold. That way, you reduce the chance of breaking your jars. I really like this little funnel. It covers up the top of the jar while you're putting the liquid in, so there's not as much stuff on the rim of the jar once you get it all in there. I got it from Amazon, and I'll link it down below so you can take a look at it. I like to work in batches when I have things like this to be canned. That way I can get this part done and get them in the warm canner so that everything stays warm while I work on the rest. A chicken broth like this is one of my very favorite things to keep in my pantry all the time. And I do both pint jars like I'm doing here, and on another day I'll do quart jars. The pint jars are perfect for single servings, say, or to cook rice or to make something in our little Instant Pot. Quart jars I'll use for making soups or when I'm making something that takes a larger amount. So having both is really a great option for me. It's also really nice to have these pint jars when someone is sick and maybe just needs a little warm broth to drink instead of a whole big meal. And this is perfect for that. I know exactly what's in it. I know exactly what's not in it. I can season it up with salt, a little pepper. I can put my Nature's Best seasoning. I can put my house blend of seasoning in it. I can put a little my homemade cream of mushroom soup mix in it to thicken it up a little bit. It's so versatile. You will find yourself using it in many different ways. Now, once I have the jars filled, I'm going to wipe the rims with plain white vinegar. And I keep a little jar of that handy to use in just such situations. So I'm going to pour a little into my jar so I don't contaminate my whole big jar there. And I'm going to pour a splash into my canner. And that helps keep the jars nice and clean in the canning process. So each rim is going to get wiped down with a clean spot on the paper towel because I don't want to transfer from one to the other. See, turn it over, use a different spot. And then re-wet it as I need to. Each jar gets a new lid. if I can get them apart. And then a ring. Now I want to make sure that my rings fit properly, that they're not rusted, they're in good shape, because rings I reuse over and over. So I want to make sure that they are good every time I use them. If they're not, I just discard them. I'm going to screw them down fingertip tight and then set them in the canner. That way, they're going to stay warm while I work on the rest. Once they're all in, get them all centered up, put the lid on, and make sure it's secure. And once it starts venting steam, we will set our timer for 10 minutes. And when the 10 minutes is up, we're going to add our weight. And this is a 10-pound weight, which is the appropriate size for our elevation. And once the pressure is built up, we will turn our fire down and we'll set our timer for 20 minutes. Once that's done, we'll let the pressure come down naturally. We will open them for about 5 minutes to let the steam start to escape. Then we'll take the lid off, let it sit for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then set the jars on the counter to cool. We will let them sit for 24 hours, make sure everything has sealed, then we'll remove the rings and put a label on each jar. And if you do happen to have one that didn't seal, you can put it in the refrigerator and use it within 2 or 3 days. So there we have it, a fresh batch of chicken broth for the pantry and the first week of Pantry Challenge done. See you next week.